we have an incredible wealth of narrative that runs through the entirety of text. If we look, we can be guilty sometimes. We pull a scripture or two out. Well, that fits within the greater narrative. And if you can tell that narrative, that story, people have the ability to remember it usually a lot greater. And that's the goal of our preaching, right? Not momentary inspiration, but longevity.
Welcome to the Christian Leader Made Simple podcast. I really hope this episode helps you learn and master the skills you need to grow your leadership effectiveness and enjoyment. Be sure to hit the subscribe button to get notified as soon as I post a new session so you don't miss a single episode. I'd also greatly appreciate any reviews, likes, and shares that you can give me. It just helps me extend my reach to more people. So leaders, I know just how frustrating it can feel when you're in the weeds of work or ministry and life is chaotic, you're struggling to feel effective, and you're just not enjoying leadership as much as you could be. And so to help you, after many years of leadership and executive coaching, I've developed a framework called the Christian Leader Blueprint that'll guide you to find clarity in your life and leadership. It'll help you gain a better rhythm of life. It'll help you see yourself more clearly, to leverage your strengths, and you'll produce more productive relationships. It's a step-by-step guide to leadership transformation. And I have that in two formats now. I have a free short guide that you can find on ryanfranklin.org, and I have a book, The Christian Leader Blueprint. And you can find that in any format, including an audiobook, wherever you buy your books. I have a few more things on my website that you may be interested in, so just head on over to ryanfranklin.org and check it all out. And now, let's get to our session. This is going to be an exciting interview today. We have Pastor Josh Carson on the podcast, and let me quickly introduce you to him. Pastor Carson is the senior pastor of Calvary Tabernacle in Indianapolis, Indiana, which includes oversight of 4 additional works in the Indianapolis area. He is also the president of Indiana Bible College and Calvary Christian School. Previously, he worked in youth ministry for nearly 20 years, and he served as the president of UPCI Youth Ministries. And Josh is super passionate about leading and training the next generation to reach this world. He holds a Master's of Arts in Christian Ministry with a focus in counseling, and he's an avid learner even to this day. So, Pastor Josh, welcome to the Christian Leader Made Simple podcast.
Oh, it's my honor. I'm appreciative of the opportunity, all the work that you do, and glad to join you on the podcast today for sure.
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, over the past year, I've gotten to know you a little bit better. And I know enough about you to know that you juggle a ton of responsibilities, and in the middle of all of that, you have a pretty good balance in life. And so today, I've asked you to come on the podcast to talk about thriving in ministry and life. And we just want to kind of get in your life a little bit here. But before we get into that particular topic, I want to ask you about your preaching.
Okay.
One of the things you're known for is your preaching. You travel all over and preach conference. You were just here in Louisiana preaching a men's conference. In my opinion, you're a master at preaching through a narrative. You captivate us all. You did at men's conference. You captivate us all with the stories that you tell. And if you don't mind, can you just share with us how that sort of works for you and how you intertwine that into your messages?
Well, I would be honest and say I don't know that I'm worthy of the way you just said that, but I'm humbled and I honor those words, and I'm glad to talk about it from my perspective. We all have context, Ryan. That's just a reality. We all have context. We've been shaped by different people, their preaching styles, the way they preach, and I think we all maybe we can associate with others differently. Mm-hmm. For me, I think one of the things that I stand upon is not just those who shaped my life, but the way they shaped me to look at the text. So you will probably never hear me call, when I'm reading through a narrative, reading through scripture, you won't hear me call them characters. You'll hear me talk about them as humans, people, individuals, And for some that might be semantics, but for me, if we make them Bible characters, we don't have to deal with the story as reality. Maybe even if it's just subconsciously, they're just a character in the text. Well, they're not. They were real people. And so prayerfully, when I'm preparing, the Lord, typically when I'm preparing a message, the Lord has spoken a name to me. He's dealt with me during devotion. I've been reading in something. You know how it is. It jumps out at you. But then as I'm preparing for a message, people remember stories more than anything. And we have an incredible wealth of narrative that runs through the entirety of text. If we look, we can be guilty sometimes. We pull a scripture or two out. Well, that fits within the greater narrative. And if you can tell that narrative, that story, people have the ability to remember it usually a lot greater. And that's the goal of our preaching, right? Not momentary inspiration, but longevity. And so my preparation, man, I will spend a lot of time just reading and rereading and multiple sources about that narrative, trying to get the historical understanding. And then this is where I lose some people. So I guess I'm giving the setup. I lose some people. But let's take someone for instance. I was preaching, so I was just there at Louisiana, and I'm preaching about Jehu. He doesn't always get a lot of airtime. I had to spend a lot of time looking at the history of the kingdoms and the divide in the kingdoms and where he sets in kingship and in order. So I'm doing all the historical, but part of my devotion when I'm praying and talking to God, if I'm gonna preach about a person from the scripture, as weird as it sounds, I try to have coffee with that person in my living room. I'm trying to visualize them in the setting. And this is odd to some people, but I'm a little bit creative by nature. So I'm trying to really picture them. I'll read a scenario, and I don't want to read that he's riding. The Bible says they notice his driving in the chariot because he drives ferociously. He's coming down, and they're able to recognize him. I'm trying to see the dust flying in the air. I'm trying to see the mane of the horse that's whipping in the wind. I'm looking for the expressions on those that are watching him that is coming there. He's going to have this interaction with Jezebel, who the Bible says she's got this painted face. In my mind, I'm watching her stand in front of the vanity and begin to put this makeup, and I'm trying to gather her expressions so that when I tell or preach the narrative, I'm not missing these details like a great author that would captivate. Those little personable details that might keep the leader engaging the audience. You know, postmodernity has put us in this terrible place where the average audience needs a new emotional hook every 2 minutes. That's tragic statistically for us as speakers and leaders. So one way I try to describe it really clear is just being as well versed, not only in what it says, but how I can envision it to bring it to life. I don't know if that answers, but that's kind of a short synopsis of what I'm trying to do.
That's pretty neat. So what I think I'm hearing you say is you're getting into this story and trying to understand the story to such great detail that when you deliver it to the audience, they're getting maybe not as much as you've gotten, but they're getting a tremendous amount of detail as well, and that just brings the story alive in their lives. That's pretty interesting. Did I get that right, by the way?
It is. It's the right way, and I'm a nightmare for some people because even if I have notes, 9 out of 10 times when I'm preaching, you and I have laughed about this privately, it's like a Post-it with a few points because I am so intrinsically woven into that story by that point. Really what I'm doing is I'm just preaching the narrative. I'm just preaching the narrative. And so someone says, how can you do that? Well, the memorization work, I have the ability to retain in my memory, and
you have an unbelievable memory. Yes.
I count it a gift. So, but I've spent a lot of time with that narrative and with those individuals. And so that's a little part of the how. I want to give the grace to God on that, though, for helping me remember when I'm up there. There's no doubt. It's His grace and a gift there.
It is extremely, extremely effective. And I try to look at something like that because I don't have near as good a memory as yours. In fact, mine is pretty low. And so I've got to figure out how to translate that into and create a narrative with notes, because I use a lot of notes, manuscript style preacher teacher. But it's, I guess essentially it'd be the same thing. It's studying and reading and trying to get the details, and then I would get it on paper as you would as you would work it out in your head.
Yeah. And I teach with a lot of notes. That I speak a lot. That's part of with being here, and we're going to talk about rhythm of life. And that's one thing, but I speak a lot. So this week I happen to be speaking 9 different times. So
oh my goodness,
how I prepare. Yeah, you would get on to me, I know, if we were in a side conversation, but how I prepare for those, it looks different based on setting, right? It's different based on setting. And so when I'm teaching, especially if I'm teaching on a meaty topic, our notes are twofold. I turn in fact, our creative lead is here, a part of this podcast that's been helping me with this. And she knows the way that we've structured this. We do notes twofold, which is maybe somebody will glean from this that speaks. We do notes that I give a set amount of structure, but then we also have an in-house note taker that as that lesson is being taught, there are additions being made from the meat of the moment. As the Spirit of God moves and as we're teaching through the text, there are things that might not be in the notes that need to be in the finalized notes that go onto our app. And so that's a part of the process as well. In the adding to those notes.
So I know we can't go down this rabbit trail too far because we won't get to what our topic is. But you guys put a copy of the notes in your church app?
Yeah, every Wednesday night lessons, we run series on Wednesday nights, and the copy of those notes is available for all our members at all times.
Man, that is tremendous, especially for people that like to go on and study in more depth and review the lesson that's being taught. That's tremendous.
Yeah, it's the takeaway, right? Like last night, because I am a passionate guy, I was trying to teach, but I got through about half of the notes, and I was able to tell them, even because I won't go back to that lesson. I won't. I feel like the Spirit of God did its intended purpose on that topic last night. But they can go forward if they want to study forward in the rest of the hard notes. They can do that.
And just a side note for the listeners, if they're don't have anyone that can be a note taker or something like that, there's a ton of AI
absolutely
applications out there right now that will do that for you. It will literally transcribe your message within seconds. In fact, right. I do that on this podcast. I put the notes of the transcription of this podcast on as a blog on my website every week, and that's done within seconds by a very inexpensive AI app. And so that's a great idea. I love the thought of that for sure.
Thank you. So kudos to our team. I want to give them good credit.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So moving on to thriving in ministry and life, with your extensive responsibilities with both within your church, within the school, your family. By the way, how many kids do you have?
32. No, just 4 children.
30. I thought it was 31, but 32. Huh?
4 kids. 4 kids. Yeah.
4 kids. So you're juggling church, school, 4 kids, wife. You're a sought-after conference speaker, traveling all over the place, and probably more that I don't even know about. But regarding healthy life balance, now I know that there's some struggles in there. You're not perfect in this.
No way.
Tell us about some of I want to hear some of the good, juicy struggles that Josh Carson has in finding balance in life.
Yeah. Well, let me start here and just say one of my struggles is that I wake up in flesh every day, like everyone
Yeah.
else.
Yeah.
And I think there can be this perception out there. Well, any leader that you may honor or respect, they're just human, and they've got their own issues they have to work through. I, like anyone else, one of my struggles is just trying to figure out, how am I going to be a hero at home as much as I'm ever a hero in public, because that matters the most. So I try to live
Absolutely.
off of this understanding that I've got to first really be a true, genuine follower of Jesus Christ. Like that's foundational. You don't graduate from that. I don't care how many conferences you preach, how many camp meetings you get invited to, or what size church you pastor. You don't graduate. In fact, it's the entry level qualification just to be a follower of Christ, that daily discipleship and being a part of that devotional process with God every day. And I think some people mix that up, Ryan. They think that, I want to distinguish it this way. Devotion and like spiritual warfare, those are not the same. Devotion is just my time with God, and it's necessary. So that's my one way I keep balance. The juicy struggle of it all is making sure that when life comes at you and everything, there's 1,000 people and 1,000 things that need your attention right now, making sure that you don't ever capsize your own process and get more busy working for God than you are working with God and doing His will. So for me, it's the balancing act. We've talked through this personally a lot. We'll get into it here in a minute, but it's who I empower around me, the tools, the tips, the techniques, the things that keep me grounded. I'm really honored by what I get to do, but I don't feel some sense of validation that's different by it. And I thank God for that, because if I did, I could have my own risks for egotism. I could have my own risks, as you know, for wanting to please people. That's these kind of balance. They actually help each other, but I could lean one way or the other, because I really would like everyone to love me and like what I'm doing. I'd like everyone to like every call. And I would like everyone to think it's a great call. It's a great idea, And so I have to guard against those risks. And I try to do that by having really healthy balance of life and allowing the people around me to speak into my life and help keep that guarded.
I love that. So your main, I guess if I could sum up your main struggle is just the fleshly side of you, the internal struggles that may be there, and just fighting through that with rhythm of life and with devotion with the Lord and things of that nature, and leaning on people around you.
Yeah, my main struggle is just that I have so much going.
Yeah.
Right? There's just so much. That's my main struggle, is that if I'm not careful, I could just get out of balance with one thing or another. And I can't do that. So I guess the main struggle for me would be to not utilize the structure that I know actually works and keeps integrity in the entire process.
That's good. That is gold right there. That is really good, to not use the structure around you. So that kind of bridges into my next question I want to ask you about structure.
Yeah.
Your just literally the structure of your days and your weeks, it's going to help you juggle everything effectively, obviously.
Critical.
Any tips or tools that you would recommend? And maybe just tell us a little bit about your structure of your days and weeks. I'd love to know what it looks like.
Okay. Well, mine obviously is going to look different than a lot of people's. And so let me come out of the gate by telling you this as a listener. Do not compare what you're doing with what
Great
other
point.
people are doing. You've got to find what works for you. And
Great point.
Nothing about this podcast nothing about this podcast can be you saying, well, man, I shouldn't feel so busy if he's managing that. And there's never comparison amongst each other. I'm blessed with incredible teams and staff that I'm about to talk about. And I think my team would tell you, I love to develop teams and empower people. I will tell you, I can tell you want to ask me. Go ahead.
Well, I just want to say, I just want to point out that, your organization is a few steps ahead of many organizations. And so I'm looking at this, even in this question, as to what some individuals that may be listening to this can strive towards. It sort of gives them a vision to what they can work towards, and you do it effectively. So to hear what you do, to hear your tips and tools and how you structure your day and week, I think will be extremely valuable no matter where those individuals may be.
Awesome.
But great point.
Well, I will tell you, for us, I love empowering people. Okay. Now, when I was younger, we used to call it delegation. Now we call it empowering. It's really the same thing, on some level. Yeah. But people shouldn't feel like they're simply delegated to. They should feel empowered. Everything from cleaning the floor to setting up lights and microphones and giving also valuable feedback. So the way this works for me within the scope and structure of what we have is allowing our team to actually have a voice and to be a team. Common words for me with leaders that are around me are, judge me on this. I learned that. It was what I was taught by walking in rooms with peers that I highly respected and leaders that I really trusted that said those words. And when I first heard them in a room and someone who I highly respected said, I need you to judge me on this. At first I thought, I'm not judging you on anything. There's no way, until I realized that my critical feedback was protecting their purpose. And so every day for me here looks different. I have, as you know, an amazing secretary. I have three different drinks. We were talking about this right here before me. I have 3 different types of drinks that we're setting on this table because I came from a meeting that ran 6 minutes over, and I'm walking in to be a part of the podcast, and these drinks are sitting here. Now, some people is going to listen to this and be like, wow, that's needy. I didn't ask her to do this. It was just something she's trying to help me win.
She has a gift. She has a gift to do what she's doing, for sure.
She does. She has a gift for it. And I will say this, she would tell you she is empowered to lead with excellence. Mm-hmm. She is not, I don't treat her as a leader that I have to put my thumb on, that I have to keep creativity down. She has a vital voice at the table. And so I think it helps her to enjoy doing the job as well. It's not that I'm the chief.
I need to bring that out a little bit. You've given even your administrative assistant a voice. Oh. That is so valuable. That is when you're delegating, to me, that is one of the most valuable things about delegating, about working with a team, is giving your team a voice. I love that. Kind of dive into that just a hair more, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. I think she probably would see my blind spots more than others would. And if she doesn't have license to call me on that, and you're probably not putting people around you that are going to do it in an antagonistic fashion, but you also can't be leading in a way that they have to be passive aggressive because you can't handle direct feedback. And so there's a balance there. But when it comes to the validation of voice, I think my stance on it is honestly biblical. How is it possible that the Holy Ghost trusts her enough to use her voice for the validation of the infilling of the Spirit, but we wouldn't trust that voice enough for it to be used in one-on-one conversations or team settings? And I know the scenarios are very different, and some could say, well, that's too far apart, but I would disagree. The Spirit of God so trusts that individual that when he does fill them, the initial evidence of that infilling we believe is recognized because when they receive the Spirit of God, they're filled with His Spirit, that He gets a hold of their tongue. So I put Spirit-filled people around me that are helping guard that. Then that voice can be validated. So that's kind of my philosophy there.
And I think about what that does for you. It helps you. It brings to the table a different set of eyes that you would normally not have. But I also think about what that does to your administrative assistant, how that makes her feel accepted, how that makes her feel valued and affirmed in what she's doing. And to me, I mean, we just want to we want a seat at the table. We want to feel like we're valuable in whatever organization that we're serving in. And that is what makes it valuable. They have a voice. You're willing to listen to them.
Acknowledging value. We've preached for the last 2,000 years about a little kid who brought some fish and bread, who everybody else would have thought didn't have much. Well, he's kind of outside of Christ, the star of the show, because of the little bit that he brought. It changed the dynamics big time. And so I think to ever have staff, whether volunteer or paid, that we treat differently than that, I think it's a miss for us as leaders if we don't give teams that right. And obviously, if you're listening, you got to balance that. Nobody can be a runaway train with their voice. We're going to all have different personalities, but I think allowing that to stay open. I've heard a lot of pastors that say, "Well, I've got an open door policy." Well, we also have to have open ear policy. We have to make sure that we're ready to hear and receive, and whether it's what we want to hear, sometimes it's what we need to hear. And I think most of your listeners would say, as a leader, they're in that place as well. They want that critical feedback. I trust to a fault at times, and so I'm going to say, everyone listening, you want that feedback anyway. You just have to make sure that the people around you know that you'll receive it without judgment and with good dialogue.
Yeah. So any other thoughts that may be just practical tools or the way that you structure your days and weeks? Any other thoughts on that?
Sure. Let me talk to you just a little bit about, so every day looks different for me. That same administrative setup helps guard the way my days look with the multiplicity of, we continue to see campuses added and educational institutions. We have graduation tomorrow night, so that's very exciting for us. That one is going to have the summer hiatus, so to speak. We're going on summer break, and then another one in a month. But the way that my days look are built around that structure. I have to be okay, and every leader listening to this has to be okay with the fact you can't give your time to everybody. If you want to, if you have to be, I've taught this for years, and I believe in it. If you have to A, be in every meeting, or B, be everyone's favorite person, you have to always lead small. You just do. You have to always lead small. So you've got to be honest about where you can be. And then you've got to let anyone that helps you structure your days, your week, you've got to let them be honest with you about where you can be and what you can be doing as well. It's not abnormal at all that I have 3 or 4 different places, like you, the listener, that you need to be at the same place at the same time. So we have to prioritize. For me, my day is built around that structured allowance. I don't, and I don't think any good leader should, if you're very busy and you have an assistant, whether it's a volunteer or a paid staff, none of that matters. If you're empowering them properly, especially to the other speakers that are on here, you need to be able to let somebody besides just you veto your schedule. And not just your wife. That's good. Not just your spouse, not just your wife or your husband. If you're a female leader that's listening to this, if you're married, it can't just be your spouse. Because if we live off the principle with our families that over the course of the month, you can't win every day and you can't win even every week, but you should be trying to win months. And in doing that, ultimately, your family has to get the best of your time, not just the rest of your time. And so you need somebody that's helping you win close to you, that can veto events, that can guard you, that can,
And it doesn't have to be an administrative assistant. It could be
no,
a
not
close
at all.
friend or
Absolutely. I
somebody
do.
within your ministry.
You're exactly right. And that's a valuable, you and I have talked a lot about like relational nutrients and what that looks like. For
Yeah.
me, it has taught me and helped me with the ability to say no.
Mm-hmm.
People hear me on a weekly basis say your best yeses will be the result of your best nos. And so
Yeah.
learning how to say no. And don't we find out with a lot of leaders, that is the hardest word, just saying no, like you feel some
It
guilt
is so hard. It is
to
so hard.
say no. But if we're not careful, we have unintentionally adopted this Messiah complex
Yeah.
that we can do it all. And we have to be careful that we don't adopt. Maybe you're a church leader. You got to make sure you don't adopt some developed style of leadership that's actually not an apostolic model of leadership that's just become the culture or the subculture of the church over time. So I
Yeah.
run everything through shared calendars. The way that my events are put on there, nothing about what I do is now. This will be a challenge for some. I don't do a lot of stuff. I don't schedule stuff that's secretive. I don't
Mm-hmm.
even develop messages that are secretive. You know this about me. I didn't say this earlier on the narrative. I'll reserve it because I want it to fit here within this. People should be able to not just veto your calendar, they should be able to judge it. And that sense for every leader that's listening, a lot of your calendar weekly may be involved in the teaching or speaking aspect. Part
Mm-hmm.
of that judgment are the people that help you develop and talk through what you're teaching, preaching about. I'm a major believer in team dynamics and even team lesson and message development. And so
That's good.
it's probably another topic for another time, but somebody needs to be able to tell you your message doesn't make sense
Yeah,
and save
no
you.
doubt.
Like when you,
And not
when
after the fact.
that's exactly right. Because it will not only save you the time leading up in the preparation, but it will also save you the time of mental torment after when you find out. Because we all know it's tough enough anyway when you've just got done speaking and then you're wrestling with, Lord have mercy, did that make sense at all? So part of that is built into my structure, but every day built different based on where I've got to be. So like, for instance, I'm going to be all day at our church on Tuesday. I'm going to be there all day. On Wednesday, my day is divided into 3 separate categories. On Thursday, I'm typically going to be at our college all day long. Those are just days, the way that they're built in. Now, you and I have even worked personally on what I'm supposed to be doing with Fridays. And I'm trying to get better and better on what and how I'm winning Fridays.
Yeah.
To be good in my rhythm of life. I'm really trying that. But my day is built into segments, Monday through Sunday or Sunday through Saturday. It's built into segments. Here at our church, the way that it works and the way there's different groups and the different speaking obligations, and then with our institutions, the different teaching obligations, being short of structure doesn't work for me. But here's what I really have felt to emphasize on this meeting here today: not silent structure that no one knows about. How can I be held accountable to what only I know?
Yeah.
This rhythm of life thing, it only works not only if my secretary knows, my spouse has to be on board if I'm married, which I am, 22 years. My spouse has to be on board, but also those
kids.
the 32 or 31, 32. Yeah. My close friends also that are able to give judgment, they have to know my schedule. But then in my life, my team has to know my schedule. Everyone, from my executive pastor to our campus pastors to our creative team, all the way down to the people who I have to be able to answer questions at a certain level. So my schedule has to be.
That's a high level of vulnerability to do that. A tremendous vulnerability, but a high level of vulnerability. It takes a person that is confident in themselves and what they're doing to be able to just kind of expose their life basically to the team around them. But that is what makes the difference in somebody that is struggling to keep up with all of the responsibilities versus somebody who's thriving in that, right?
I agree totally. And I would tell you, I think it actually keeps you from burnout. I think it guards you against burnout because when you're willing to show your calendar, you're not embarrassed to show that you also need time. You need time not to be pulled on. You need time just to recoup. We all, again, if you wake up tomorrow wearing flesh, there is a biblical principle of Sabbath that is not only normative scripturally, but it is necessary. It is critical. Now, how that's structured, you and I have both found that's different for every person. We all have context and personalities, but you have to structure it intentionally in some way. And then people have to be able to judge it. It would be easy for me. I could go through a list of some people that I'm close to, a few in particular that everyone on the call, on the podcast that was watching, you could probably know them. And if I told you that, man, we work through dates and we talk through, what do I say yes to? What do I say no to? You might think, man, how could they struggle with that? Flesh, normal. This is a battle that we're all fighting. And so keeping it to yourself because you're embarrassed that you're the only one struggling with rhythm of life, that's a condemnation leaning lie from hell. We're all trying to balance this out. And you should read books. True. You should be, you should be listening to podcasts and reading books. And Ryan, you got a pretty good one that would be worth reading and implementing on some of this. So a little shameless plug there for you on that. It really is.
Thank you for that.
He didn't ask for that, but it's the truth. But in all these things, you can read the books, you can listen to the podcast, you can even have the people around you. But if you don't implement, and if you don't have anyone who can keep you accountable and hold your feet to the fire, so to speak, on implementation, then you will spin your wheels. You will be in a constant state of wishing you were doing better. So outside of the Lord and your spouse, there has to be some people in your life. And so I've done this in my life. And buddy, I'm telling you, I've got some that can talk pretty blunt to me, and it's helpful. It's been very, very helpful for me that they can call me on what it takes to be the best version of myself. Because honestly, what I'm trying to do here is not build a kingdom in Indianapolis. I'm trying to work on behalf of a kingdom that is so much greater than this small kingdom. James told me I'm a vapor. I'm lasting for such a short time. I'm not going to be here very long, but I would like my time to be effective. And so I'm a firm believer there's no resource like the human resource. And so outside of scripture and my time in prayer, I try to let God put some God people around me. And that's another big part of this that I'm going to stop with this so we can move. But you can't be a great leader without great relationships.
Yeah, that's so true. You can't. You can't. It's not possible. So, Josh, we've already dabbled into this a little bit, but I just want to check in here with you and see if there's anything you can add to this. There's times where Josh Carson gets flooded with emotion, with overwhelm of the responsibilities. If you're like me or like anybody else, you get flooded at times, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
How do you come out of that overwhelm and that flooded feeling when that happens to you?
I know the places that put virtue in me. I almost know down to a time how long it will take me to reset. That's not a very large window for me. We've talked about this. So I don't even want to say that time because I don't want anyone to judge their own, like, well, it takes me 3 days or a week, or everyone has to know their time. That's part of the integrity. You have to know your time. But part of the way I do that is I take it to God first. I just do. I take it to God first. Then I evaluate my structure and I ask myself, where am I missing? Does the structure need edited? Or did I allow there to be a breach in the structure, so to speak, because we are human. And if I did,
Yeah.
we believe in structure and oil, right? That's the menorah principle of all this. If I keep the structure.
Let's take it back just a little bit further,
Yeah.
though, because that's when
Okay.
you're probably kind of coming down from the emotion. But I mean, you're flooded. You just got maybe a unnecessary rejection from someone,
Yeah. Okay.
or whatever, and and your rhythm of life is out of whack because you had to preach
Yeah.
9 times and you traveled 3 different places in a week, and
Sure.
it's so but then you just get that rejection and you feel flooded emotionally.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like, where do you go from there? How do you come out of that? I mean, you're all of a sudden beating yourself up, and
Yep.
you're feeling that distraught feeling. How do you come out of that?
For me, it really is the first thing I do is I go to prayer. I just really do. That's my first thing is I get alone with
good.
God and I evaluate. It's introspection. I'm one of these people that believe even though it stings me, our critics are our friends. And so usually rejection is through criticism. That's how it works. I'm going to tell you how I really, I know what is going to help me come out of it or through it in the very beginning is I choose to do nothing with the rejection. That's going to sound odd to some people, but my initial Central Illinois farm country response would be to retaliate. Especially if it's a personal rejection.
Right on it.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And think, well, I can win this verbally, so let's go.
Yeah.
Our team knows here.
That competitive nature in you.
Competitive nature. I'm like, well, if you want to spar verbally, I guess this is where we're going. I try.
By the way, you and Madison do a pretty good job of that on social media sometimes.
Yeah.
It's funny.
She's been the recipient of this principle that I'm about to say right now a couple of times. And she's in the room. If I'm ever, that was just a joke. Yeah, you're right. We've heard from all over the world about the online, the
bantering.
The bantering. That's right. What she would call follower gathering. So,
that's all fun. It's fun in nature.
All fun. Yeah. And she's a great team member. And so seeing that value there, back to earlier. So for me, if I'm really hurt, or I'm really frustrated, I won't do anything with it for at least 48 hours.
That's really good.
I really believe that patience is this spiritual thing that we miss too often. Yeah. I see a lot, and let me talk specifically.
It takes a lot of maturity to hold off on something like that. It's not easy to.
Yeah, I agree. It's not easy to, and I don't want to over spiritualize, but we do have this Holy Ghost that is supposed to help us in these areas. And a lot of us, we have context where we are ready to go. And we're in a world that is always, and some of us, in fact, many that are going to watch this, you have a title that allows you the authority to just respond. Mm-hmm. Well, for me, I know from the early and the young version of me that if I respond right now, I might win this moment, but I may lose the next month, or I may lose the next 6 months with that person or with this situation because I chose to win the next hour. So I'd rather take the next couple of days. I tease my close leaders hear what you're about to hear. If it's really bad, I take at least 3 days. I'll take at least 3 days before I respond. My executive pastor would love me to share this story, so I'll share. I'll give an example. Early, he came on staff, and a situation came up where he was asked. A news venue had showed up, wanted to do an interview. It was an on the spot thing. Well, some of my previous work with marketing and had led me in a place where I've seen people's words really twisted. And if there's no script and there's no document signed on what can they say about the church. And some of us have seen nightmare stories about this. Well, he's an amazing leader. You know him well. He's unbelievable, amazing leader, but he was zealous at the opportunity and took the opportunity to go in. No contract, no word, no nothing. Well, I knew it happened, but it was like 7 days later. 7 days later, we're going through a meeting, and I said, "No, I need to talk to you. I need to talk through something." And this was years ago, so it's easy now. And we talked through the scenario and the negatives and the look on his face. And he knew, he could tell in that moment. I wasn't mad. I wasn't talking. I don't think we ever have the right to talk down to people. I wasn't talking down. But I was shaping, and I was doing a little, giving a little understanding here. But he was able to see that had bothered me. It had irritated me. And what it developed in him at the end of it, not only did he say, "That was amazing for me to hear," he said, "What taught me the most was the way you were able to take time between the incident and the education."
Wow.
And I think for us as leaders, we forget sometimes that a big part of what we're teaching is how to respond. In fact, I'm pretty convinced in the dynamics of our world right now, people are less concerned about what happens to us than they are how we respond to what happens to us.
It's
and so
true.
If I've been wounded, if I've been hurt, back to that question, I take that time. And then, Ryan, I start leaning on those relational nutrients.
So before we continue on with the podcast, this episode is brought to you by Christian Leader Community Coaching. Are you a Christian leader experiencing low productivity or a chaotic lifestyle? And maybe you're overwhelmed and just unsure of what it's going to take to create growth in your life. And so I want to introduce to you our Christian Leader Community Coaching Program. Through our step-by-step framework, you're going to discover a better rhythm of life. You'll see yourself more clearly, leverage your strengths, and build more productive relationships. With our full archive of courses, our supportive community of peers, a powerful leadership assessment to get you quickly focused. We also have live community coaching and so much more. And I've personally seen its huge impact with leaders from all over the world, experiencing laser-focused growth in their lives. And now, through this community, this experience is open to you. And we want to help you implement these simple frameworks and then celebrate with you as you experience significant results in your life. Don't wait any longer. Go to ryanfranklin.org and join the Christian Leader Community Coaching today. And I look forward to seeing you inside the community. Now back to our podcast. Absolutely.
I make those calls.
And that's what I know about you. And that's really what I'm glad you went there. I wanted you to go there without me prompting you. But you have such a phenomenal support team around you of people that feed you. And that is what, in my mind, prayer first. Absolutely, we go to God. But absolutely, we have to go to people as well, especially in the most serious times of where we're really, really struggling. We need those relational nutrients.
Yes, not Facebook. Not social media.
Yeah.
Confidential people, your confidant, those people you receive.
I'm going to push that further.
Nutrients.
Not even text messages.
No, I agree.
Minimum a phone call. Minimum.
I agree. Absolutely. If you can meet in person, if you can sit down and drink coffee with somebody or if you can have lunch with somebody and talk through and I use these words every time. I say, I need you to judge me on this. I feel, I'm a little hurt. And if you're hurt, you've got to be mature enough to say you feel a little hurt. I know it's vulnerability, it's transparency, but you've got to be willing to talk through, what you're really feeling. If you walk into a doctor's office, you can't sidestep what you're really feeling. If you've got to give symptoms if you want to get to the root of the issue. And so you have to have these people in your life. And let's face it, it is unfortunate how many leaders are doing everything right but the friendships.
Yeah. It's so true.
It's a burden area for me.
So true. Josh, there's so many people that are doing fantastic things in ministry and life, but they're relationally anorexic. They're relationally starving themselves to death. And that is what leads to burnout.
Statement. You're right.
That is what leads to burnout.
Yeah, they're alone and they don't have it. And I've started asking this question, especially when I'm doing like ministry training and going to some of these conferences. I will intentionally ask, and a lot of times even elders, who their close confidants are. Who are your bad day phone calls?
Yeah,
and I've been astounded how many high-level leaders are lonely.
Absolutely.
They're lonely. And you know, that's a tragic thing when we believe in an early church communal value system of the body coming together, spending time together. And I think it's because there is this dynamic. And for those of you that are watching or listening, and you've been maybe a pastor and you've been coached, like it's tough to be close with just saints and what that looks like. And I understand that, but you've got to have friends and friendships. You got to have other pastors. Let's say it this way too. If you take yourself outside of being in competition with people, and you and I are able to talk on this. You're going to teach some leadership thing. I'm going to teach some leadership thing. All we do is make each other better. I'm not in competition with you. You're not in competition with me. And that needs to be multiplied through all of our pastors, all of our leaders. What do we gain from one another? The relational value is invaluable, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's that's kind of my process there. I've gone from prayer to the person. I'm giving it the time. And honestly, then I'm deciding how I'm going to respond. You can't chase every skinny rabbit.
Great process. Yeah. No, you can't. We're gonna transition here. We're quickly running out of time here. So I want to kind of give some rapid fire maybe answers, if you can, because I want to hit a couple of these topics. I just want to know in your world how you develop these things and ensure these things are taken care of. Let's just talk spiritual health. You're super busy as we've mentioned, but I know that if you don't have good spiritual health, you're shot in the foot.
Yeah.
How do you make sure your cup stays full?
Yeah, I keep, first of all, I start my day with devotion. I am 9 out of 10 times I'm praying through the tabernacle. Those who know me know I believe, I said it earlier, I'm going to say it again, structure and oil, the menorah from within the tabernacle process, it makes sense to me. If I don't have structure, then it's just a puddle of oil on the floor. And if I have structure but no oil, then it doesn't matter. It's just another part of furniture. So I'm praying through that tabernacle plan. It's a way I stay on, even if, Lord help me, I would get interrupted between the life responsibilities, not just church, but even between wife and kids. And I try to do it at a time daily to where I'm not interrupted. But in case I am, in case an emergency, every now and then a pastor gets an emergency, a leader gets an emergency, I know where I left off in that tabernacle. It gives me process for later in the day. I will find my way and work through that devotion, because truly devotion is this ongoing relational state with God anyway. And so that's the way I treat it. And then I treat my devotion and my preaching different. Now, a lot of times my preaching becomes the result of devotion, but I'm not doing devotion trying to find messages. That's a big part for me. I don't know if that helps or not, but I'm afraid if the Bible just becomes the textbook to draw messages from, then it's not the relational side. So, and then those people in my life, Ryan, I got people at all times that can just call me. A lot of people that are going to listen to this, if you know Aaron Bounds, you know he and I are very close. Aaron can call me any day and judge me, challenge me. Luke Levine can call me any day. It's just possible. Mike Enzi, as you know, could call me and vice versa. I could call them and ask them and honestly have to say, how's your devotion today? And we have to answer honestly. And I've got a handful of people like that, from elders to younger. That way I'm guarded on all sides in my life, from elder to younger. And then while I may be a pastor, I have a pastor that can call me anytime, not just to encourage me, but to direct me if necessary. I don't believe in leaders who can't be led. And that helps keep me spiritually grounded.
That's good. That's very good. So jump into family, quality time with your family. As you mentioned with your team, you've got to give your team a voice and you've got to listen and hear what they're saying. You got to do the same thing with your family in order to have productive relationships. And so how do you ensure that you're giving quality time to listen, engage with all 5 of the people that live in your home?
Yeah, well, I'm going to tell you, it starts with I married a really unbelievable, amazing lady who is a teacher, naturally a teacher. And my wife is Rachel is very into birth order and understanding love languages. And she has helped make sure that I am coached on that as well.
That's good.
And so we try to give our kids, having 4 kids, one of the things I try to do, not just win collectively with them as a family, but I try to win individually.
Good.
Each one of my kids have different passions. My wife would say I even put too much pressure on myself. So in this rhythm of life, I can put too much pressure on myself weekly, even on trying to win something individually with each of the kids. It doesn't always happen. One of the early wins that I had to be mentored on that has helped is to know every kid has a different personality, and I can't try to make them win through my love language. I have to know theirs. For some, it's words. For some, it's quality time. For some, it's, you know how this works with gifts. And so for me, that's the way that I try to win it with them. For instance, just last week, since you asked this on a voice, and I think it's such a great question. My second son, a topic had came up in the house, and I saw it one way, and my 16-year-old son, he saw it a different way. And my natural reaction was, well, I'm the dad, and I'm thinking this, right? I'm thinking I'm the dad. I'm not here to be his friend. I'm here to be his leader. And that is the truth, and it is the balance. And I had to make a definitive call on a situation, but I called him into the room separate from his siblings. I think this is something that too many parents miss. You can find 10 minutes to call them separate from their siblings. And we had a one-on-one, just asking him, how do you view this?
Yeah.
What does this look like in your mind? How would you, if the roles were reversed? And his perspective was amazing. It was challenging. It was enlightening. And so I think that's one way that I try to win. I've got a little guy right now. So my 16-year-old, he loves golf. I want to win. If I can't win at a round of golf, which may take 4 hours, I can win 30 minutes at the driving range. And somebody with 4 kids and a lot of responsibility and trying to be a wise steward as well, I can win with him on the driving range. My little guy likes disc golf.
And winning on the driving range with him is not just going out and hitting balls. It's having those deeper level conversations while you're hitting balls, right?
Yeah. And his love language is quality time.
Yeah.
His love language is quality time and seconded by words of affirmation. So I'm able to give him his time. And through these words, man, that was a great shot. I can't believe you're out driving me. Through those words, it not only is giving him the time, but it's giving him the affirmation of, and so I'm trying to find those ways to win with my kids individually. I've got one little girl, and 3 boys, and they're all different. And I'm also dealing with a 20-year-old who's, very in love with a young lady right now. I've got all this range of emotions, and you start thinking, did I do everything I was supposed to do? Did I teach everything I was supposed to teach? And I can't ever travel back, but I can make sure that I'm trying to make sure the time I give is quality. It's intentional.
That's good.
So even if you can't give large swaths of your time, you can give intentional time.
Yeah. And I love the fact that you're looking for intentional time on a weekly basis. That seems like a good structure. You can't do it daily. You may do it multiple times in a week, but you're at least looking for that weekly, deeper level connection with each one of them. And that's an important thing.
And that's really what it is. It's like once a week, maybe with each of them. I don't want anybody to think, how's he really being able to spend time every day with it? That's not possible.
Yeah.
I know it's not possible, but they can get a genuine look in the eyes, a genuine hug, a genuine, I sure love you. I'm thankful for you. They can get that anytime that you're in their proximity.
So Josh, what does rest look like for you? How do you unwind, recharge? Just you don't have to give anything an elaborate answer, but how do you, in short form, how do you rest and unwind, recharge?
Yeah, virtue. I'm an outdoors guy. My two top ways probably of recharging are I recharge alone. I'm not a person that recharges from people. I recharge alone, and I'm constantly in public giving. So I recharge alone. For me, whether it's going to the woods or whether just sitting in my backyard with a cup of coffee, I recharge in those times alone, soaking it in. When possible, doing very little. I may be listening to something. I may be reading something. I may be on the phone call with one of my top tier closest friends, but it's intentional time that I'm not working. Rest for me is tied to being a healthy version of me, taking that time, disconnected from work, disconnected from ministry, disconnected from anyone else's needs, just trying to be a wise steward of allowing virtue. So whether I'm going to the park, whether I'm going to the woods, now that may be me going to the driving range by myself or going and standing on a putting green and just putting. And so, and again, that has to be, if you can find, it's got to be balanced. So think about, I'm trying to think of the different books that I've read, maybe Leading on Empty. Cadero is one of the great ones on that too, but weekly, monthly, quarterly, annually, how you evaluate. And then for me, it comes back to when it's structured. So I try to win at least a segment of a day a week in how I get rest.
Yeah. That's tremendous. Tremendous. Any final thoughts on thriving in ministry and life? You've given us so much here, but do you have any final thoughts?
I think my final thoughts would just be this, and it's going to sound really basic, but I hope someone will grab it. You've got to be just the best version of you.
Yeah.
Just the best version of what God has designed you to be. Whether that's a leader of a handful or whether that's a leader of thousands, that's not the validation.
Yeah.
You just got to be okay with you. Be the best leader you're supposed to be for you. And do not compare yourself with other people. Compare yourself with the will of God. Weigh yourself against the will of God for your life. And I think that's where joy comes from. So that's my recommendation. And allow people in your life that can call you on it if you're not doing that and being what you know you're supposed to be.
I love that. Great thoughts. We're going to end with a fun question.
Okay.
What's one thing on your bucket list, if you have a bucket list, that you think might surprise people? One thing you just would love to do one day?
Oh, you know what? Some people won't like this on the audience. I grew up as a hunter, as an outdoorsman, hunting whitetails. Some are turning the podcast off right now, but kind of on my bucket list, I would love to go and get to harvest a giant mule deer. That's kind of on my that's just out there. I don't know if I will get to do it, I believe someday, but that's on my list as far as something that I think would just be a blast. So if anybody's listening and you feel led of the Lord to, that's on my bucket list, a great mule deer.
So whoever's listening that has the capabilities of taking Pastor Josh on this, this is your door in to a weekend with Pastor Josh.
Man, I feel like I should call the audience to prayer for a moment. That's awesome.
Well, Pastor Josh, this has been a tremendous conversation that I know people are going to get a ton out of. Thank you so much for giving us your time. Your time is so valuable, and I respect it. And you've just given us an hour, and that is huge. So thank you for doing that and allowing us to sort of just get on the inside of your life. And so, if people want to follow you or get in touch with you in some way, just see what you're doing on in ministry or whatever, how can they find you online?
You can always find us just through Calvary Tabernacle. You Google it. We're here. The website. You can find us on Instagram. My personal is Josh Carson VSM. You can find me there as well. And it's easy. It's easy to find. It's easy to find. We have this thing called Dr. Google. You search it all. You'll see us pretty easily. I'm not on a ton of social media. If you see us on Facebook, it says my name and my wife's. We're on there together, which, just to be honest, really means she's on there. She keeps me informed if I need to know anything. But before we go, let me say thanks to you on behalf of all the people listening to this. You're saying I'm busy. You're really busy too. And this isn't just flattery. Leadership is a God passion for you. And so you utilizing a medium like this to make sure people get to hear some other voices and other perspectives. So not just for your friendship, but for your leadership and what you're doing. So thanks to you. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for that. So this concludes our show today. My name is Ryan Franklin. Thank you so much for joining us on the Christian Leader Made Simple podcast.